Greetings, Assalamu alaikum, Hotepa Barigani, Tendai Mari, whatever your greeting of peace is, welcome. Oh, we are at the Talk Black Radio Show here on Amiga FM. Enough respect to King Lion, he kept us busy, kept our minds thinking for the last 2 hours with his wonderful show. And I am here as ever with the Talk Black Pack. With my I just thought that one up. You like that one. The Talk Black Pack. Brother David, Brother Trevon. Right now, our guest is here with us. My personal trainer, who you can tell I haven't seen for a little while. But my personal trainer is also here. Brian is with us. Let's start with today's topics and the bits we want to get into. I know we always like to get into the news and try and give you a different kind of view and perspective than what you might be used to here on Talk Black Radio. So what we're trying to do is go through a lot of the stuff that's happened. Some of the stuff you'll know about, some you won't. But the perspectives, I'm hoping, will be new and will be something you can really get your teeth into. So stay with us for the next hour and 47 minutes as we chop it up and go through what's happening. My first point, which I have to say, great condolences to the family, but we have a fallen soldier among us. Brother Dick Gregory passed. I saw this morning as I woke up. That was the first post or the first text I got was to say that Brother Dick Gregory passed. And I just really want to explain and go through some of his history, because if you're not familiar with Dick Gregory, he may be known to some of you as a comedian from the 50s and 60s, but he's actually one of our main activists in that whole entertainment industry, and someone who, like, if you follow anything conscious that's been taking place through America or whatever, he's always on the front line, like just always. And you can see him right up until recently, always having something positive to say, or always giving that kind of alternative view. So, Brother Trevor, if you can just run down just some of the history of our brother and some of his great works.
Well, we know that he passed away at the age of 84, and he was a comedian, first of all. That's what he was known for. In fact, during the 60s, he was one of the biggest comedians in the United States. He was basically paved the way for Bill Cosby, for Richard Pryor, those people that we know extremely well, paved the way for them. And at a point, when he began his career, he wasn't really into activism at the time, actually. There's a quote from him, actually, when they asked him about the civil rights movement and, his role, and he said that, humour can no more find the solution to race problems than it can cure cancer. So his thing was, and at the time, that was at that point. But obviously something clicked in him. And he decided to really take it on. We know that he was close with Martin Luther King. He was close with Malcolm X.
He's actually a good friend of the Honourable Minister
Farrakhan. Right. And so when he began to change his mind, he started implementing certain things into his comedy, and he was still extremely popular. But what they said was basically in the middle of the 60s, as the civil rights movement's beginning to build and get stronger, what happened was he started the things that he was booked to do. Basically, he stopped going. So they would book him to be at a show here, and we've got the money ready and everything, and he's at a protest rally down there, or he's performing for this civil rights activist group or whatever. And essentially, he gave up his career. And they said that by the time the 70s came around, his mainstay was like black college campuses. That's what he was doing.
And you know how hard it is. Like, if you're trying to work with us and trying to stand for freedom, the first place that gets hit is your pocket.
Yeah.
First place that always gets hit, and when that happens, many people will stop, turn around,
and go, hey.
But if you can stay on that and stay on it as long as he was and as strong as he was, then we have to tip our hats or take our hats off to him. So condolences to the family and all those who feel the loss of our brother Dick Gregory.
You know what it was? I came across something that was really good this morning, because I was reading some obituaries and whatnot, and there was we know Democracy Now! Is a news station.
Amy
Goodman, right, a journalist there, and he had been on her show quite a few times, so she just put a few like interesting bits and pieces about him that I wanted to go through really quick. And one of the things she spoke about was how how he was in jail multiple times. He was actually in jail for protesting, and then in 1965, I believe it was, or was it 1960? Yeah, 1965, during the Watts riots, he was actually shot while he was trying to calm down the protesters in 1965.
He got shot in the knee.
In the knee, yeah. And then 2 years later, he actually ran for mayor of Chicago. That was in 1967. Then the following year, in 1968, he actually ran for president, and they said that he got 1.5 million votes as a write-in candidate. He was actually arrested during that time because he printed bills, dollar bills, with his face on it as part of the campaign. So the US Treasury, they actually arrested him off the back of that. But
Because you actually are not allowed to print your own dollar bills, though.
basically, yeah. yeah, but that was his spirit, And then basically, he began fasting quite a bit. So they said right, that's what we were talking about. So like in 1967, they said that he weighed about 280 pounds. I'll have to ask Google or Siri exactly how much that is in stones or that. But that's a significant, right? That is a significant, that's a significant weight. Anyway, he began fasting in protest of the war that was happening in Vietnam, and in 40 days didn't eat. And basically, at the end of the 40 days, I think they said he weighed 97 pounds. Okay. At the end of it,
Brian, don't look at me, Brian. Don't look at me.
So he took on, and then he began actually going on numerous hunger strikes for different causes. In terms of segregation, in terms of drugs problems in the community. During that, we had the Iran hostage crisis. He actually went down to Tehran to actually try and help negotiate to bring back people, to free the prisoners. He travelled to Ireland to take part in advising some of the hunger striking IRA protesters as well. And just throughout his life, whatever struggle was being held, he was always interested in it, and even particularly when it came to our community, like you said, always on the forefront. There's so many different, if you go through YouTube, you can see him so many different events, talking on so many different issues, particularly where it concerns us as black people. And it's just someone who's just dedicated their life really to the service of their people and to oppressed people generally. So it's a life well lived.
Yeah, this is it. And I think when it's like that, it's hard to be downcast, because it's someone who's used their time so well among us. So, like I said, it's blessings, and then our hats come off, and we have to, big up our brother. But let's move on to the struggles of today. News. All I've been hearing all this week: Donald Trump and what's going on in America. Everyone's talking about white supremacists. I think